right, let's talk about the dative case. So this can be one of the most confusing cases for students to learn because many students don't have a lot of grammar and English grammar before they come into Latin. So we'll take a couple weeks on it. We'll slow it down a bit. But if you know your English grammar, what you'll know is that the dative case in English is called the indirect object. So clue there if you've heard of that. The indirect object is sometimes just called the IO. So in English, it's called an indirect object, and Latin called a dative. And in Latin, it can only occur in a sentence that has an accusative, or what in English is called a direct object. So a dative is a noun or a pronoun that answers the question to whom or for whom or to what or for what after an action verb. And so all these verbs will be action verbs, and they will be giving, showing, or telling verbs. And these verbs are introduced to you this week in your vocabulary. So the accusative in a sentence answers the question who or what is receiving the action of the verb. We've talked about this, the accusative being the victim of the verb, or you ask the question who or what is being verbed. It has an accusative. Now the dative answers the question who or what is receiving the accusative. So you can see that you can't have a dative without an accusative because the dative is directly tied to the accusative. So let's give this a try. I'm going to show it to you in English first, and I'll show you how to find out what the dative is. Now, the quarterback threw the ball to the receiver. First of all, we're going to identify the verb, which is threw, tells us what the action is. And then we look for who threw, who's the subject, who's the nominative, the quarterback is. And what did the quarterback throw? What was the victim of being thrown? That is the ball. And so the ball is the accusative. So remember, we go back and we answer this question. Who or what is receiving the accusative? And in this case, the accusative is the ball. Who what is receiving the ball? The receiver is. So the receiver is actually the dative. Okay, let's look at the next one. So Grandma bought a new car for Julia. We see that the action verb is bought. And who bought? Grandma bought. So grandma's the nominative. And now what was the victim of being bought? What was bought? A new car. So the car is the accusative. And who receives the accusative? Who is the beneficiary of the new car? Julia is. So Julia is the dative. Okay, the last one. She fed corn to the chickens. So fed is the verb, and it's the action verb, because I will tell you that you cannot have a to be verb in a sentence with a dative. It needs to have an action verb. So who fed? She fed. So she is the nominative. What got fed? What got the action? Well, it's easy to be careful of this one because it's easy to go, oh, well, the chickens were fed. Yes, in the end, the chickens were fed, but she fed something. What did she feed? What was actually fed, handed out? That was the corn. So she fed corn. Now, who was the beneficiary? Who received the corn? The chickens did, and therefore the chickens are the dative. So I want you to take a look for a pattern here, because if we can identify patterns in Latin, it'll make things so much better. If you look, every single one of these sentences has, have you noticed, a to or the for. And if you look on your chart book on page 1 where the nouns are, where we translate those into English, you'll notice that the dative into English always comes with a to or a for after it. So there's a clue. Now, in some English sentences with certain kinds of objects, which is the dative in Latin, don't always contain a to or a for. So they can have different kinds of objects, like object of the preposition, but in Latin that still is the dative. They don't have a to or a for. So when we need to identify where the dative would be if it was a Latin sentence, it'll help if you insert a to or a for into the sentence. So let's try these. So if I said Emma left the waiter a tip, there's no to or for in there. But if I said Emma left a tip for the waiter, if I put it in the right place, it wouldn't go Emma left the waiter for a tip. You don't leave a waiter behind in order to tip somebody, right? So you have to put the for where it makes most sense, which was Emma left a tip for the waiter. So Emma here would be the nominative, left is the verb. What did she leave? What was the victim of being left? A tip. And who was it for? We have that same for the right here. It was for the waiter. So the waiter becomes the dative. So let's look at this one. This one does also not have a to or a for. We have to figure out where to put it so we can figure out what the dative is. The tour guide gave us a stern lecture about jumping off the monument. So give. So here we have our giving verb. Do you see that? Giving verb. I told you they have to be two giving, showing, telling verbs. There's our verb. Tour guide is the nominative. Now, what did the tour guide give? Did he give us something, or did he give a stern lecture? So where would the to or the for make most sense? Did he give us to a stern lecture, or did he give a stern lecture to us? Makes way more sense, because a stern lecture is not something you can hand somebody over to. So he gave a stern lecture to us. Because we can put the to in there, we know that's the dative, because it gets the to or the for, right? And the accusative would be the stern lecture. So next one here. Our camp counselor told the group a scary story at the bonfire. So here we have a telling verb. Remember, giving, showing, telling. Here's our telling verb. Who's the one that told? The camp counselor is the one that told. What did he tell? Did he tell the group to a scary story, or did he tell the scary story to the group? I hope he told the scary story to the group. That would make much more sense. So if we put a to in there, so we know that he told, the victim of being told was the scary story, and who did he tell it to? The group. All right, last one. The World War II veterans showed the cadets his ragged scars. Here we have the showing verb. So as I said, giving, showing, telling. That's our verb. Who showed? The veteran showed. Now we're going to find the accusative. What did he show? Did he show his ragged scars, or did he show the cadets? So let's figure out where the to goes. Do we show his ragged scars to the cadets, or did we show the cadets to his ragged scars? Well, unless they speak and have personalities, he probably showed the ragged scars to the cadets. And because we can put the to there, that's where the dative goes. That's how we figure it out what it is in English. All right, so let's take a look at some Latin dative rules for now, okay? The reason I say for now is you'll learn some other ways to use dative in the coming years of your Latin life. But for now, datives can only occur in a sentence that has an accusative. If there is a word with a dative ending, but there is not an accusative in the sentence, that word can't be dative and has to be a different noun case, so you can eliminate that. And we'll do some sentences in Latin in a minute. I'll show you how that works. A sentence with a dative must have a giving, showing, or telling verb. There's some differences later, but for right now, keep that in mind. A sentence with a to be verb cannot have a dative in it, has to have an action verb, and you can translate the dative noun into English with a to or for in front of it. So here's 3 Latin verbs you know, because they're in your this week's vocabulary. Do, dari, dedi, datum means to give. Monstro, monstrari, monstrari, monstratum means to show. Naro, narari, narari, naratum, to tell. So if you see any of those verbs, it's automatically going to be a trigger for you that you want to look for a dative in the sentence. Okay, let's do these 3. So the first one, nautai rosas filii monstrant. Nautai rosas filii monstrant. So let's take a look. Now that you know more than accusative and nominative, what you're going to have to start doing is you're going to have to label every word with every possibility. Because if you look in your first declension endings noun charts, you know that nominative plural can have an AE right here. So this could be nominative plural. This could be genitive singular, and this could also be dative singular. So it's going to be your job, a process of elimination, to figure out which one that is. But let's take a look for the verb first, as always. Monstrant, it ends in NT. There's our verb, so we know that it's third person, plural, and present tense. Because it's plural, we know that whatever the nominative is, the nominative has to be plural. So the nominative has to be plural. We look, there is a potential nominative plural there, so we'll keep that in mind. So that's good. We also know that the only the only person you can have a separate nominative for is third, and there is a third person, so that would work for nominative as well. So let's put all the other endings on here, and let's see what else we can find. So rosas right here, that only option, look in your chart books, the only option is accusative plural. Remember, these are the ones that you are memorizing. Okay, filii also has an AE on it, which tells us it can be nominative plural, dative singular, or genitive singular. Okay, so there's a couple we can eliminate right away. We can eliminate genitive singular because I've not taught you genitive singular yet. Now, that leaves us with nominative plural and dative singular. So let's give it a try. We're first going to try it with this one being nominative plural and this one being dative singular. The reason is we can't have two nominative plurals is there's no and in between, or there's no and in between for the datives either. So we have to pick one or the other to be it. Okay, so let's start with nominative plural. Remember, when we translate a sentence, we do nominative first, then verb, then accusative, and then you're going to put everything else if we have dative or something else there at the end. So nominative is nautai. Nautai is the sailors. All right, now we have the verb, and it is present tense. So they are, the sailors show. Now we have to do the accusative. Who do they show? The roses. Now our dative. We'll use filii for dative this time. Remember, it has a to in front of it. To the daughter. Does that make sense? It does make sense. What's the other way? Now we can do it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it around, and we'll have nautai be the dative singular and filii. Because if you remember, word order in Latin doesn't really matter like it does in English. So we have to figure out from context which is which. So let's start with filii. This time, instead of being to the daughter, it'll be daughters plural, because it would have to be nominative plural. The daughters show. This doesn't change at all. Show the roses doesn't change. Show the roses to the, now sailor becomes singular. Do either of those make sense? They make complete sense. The sailors could show the roses to the daughter, and the daughters could show the roses to the sailor. We don't know what it is because we don't have context. So in that case, either of those sentences would be correct. All right, let's change colors here and do the next one. Okay. Amica fabulam reginae narabat. So look for the verb. Verb ending is BAT. Don't forget to look for the whole verb ending. So we see that it's third, it's imperfect, and it is singular. So if we have a nominative, it has to be singular. We have third person, which means that we can have a separate nominative because it's in third person. So let's look and see what could be a separate nominative. Now, amica can only be nominative because if you look in your charts, the only thing a plain old A without a macron can be is nominative, and it is nominative singular. Okay, fabulam. If you look in your chart book, the only thing can be, remember these charts you have to have memorized by your midterm, so you might as well learn them because it'll be so much faster than looking in your chart books every time. Fabulam has to be accusative singular. Now we've got reginae. We've got the same things that we had up here. We could be nominative plural, genitive singular, or dative singular. And again, we can eliminate genitive singular right away because you don't know it. We can also eliminate nominative plural because our verb is singular. You cannot have a plural nominative and a singular verb. So the only thing that's left is dative, and that's what you know is correct. Again, let's translate it. Nominative, verb, accusative, and then dative. So nominative is the friend. You could say the female friend if you like, or you could just say the friend and know that we're talking about a girl. What does she do? Imperfect. She was telling. There's our giving, showing, telling verb, which gives us a clue. that this is a dative sentence. So what was she telling? She was telling a story, because that's our accusative. Now we can add our dative. To the queen. That is the only way that that can be translated. You could say the friend was telling the queen a story. Totally fine. The queen was telling, in fact, I'll write that down for you. That also is totally correct. It doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. Was telling the queen a story. I always like the to or for in front of it because then I don't get confused as to which was the dative, especially when you're first doing that. But both of those make English sense. Okay, last one here. Ancilli canam poetis dabunt. So let's find our verb. If you see our verb ending is bunt, so that automatically tells us that it's future, it's third again, and it's plural. Because it's plural, we can look for a plural nominative, and because it's in third person, we can actually look for a nominative. So ancilla, you should be getting used to seeing this ending right now. We've got some choices, as you know from above. It can be nominative plural, which would work with the verb. It can be dative singular, or it could be genitive singular. Okay, canam, again, only thing it can be according to your chart book is accusative singular, and poetis. So our two choices are dative plural and ablative plural. Okay, so how are we going to choose? Well, we know that I haven't taught you genitive yet. And so that leaves us with the dative or nominative. Over on poetis, I haven't taught you ablative plural yet. That only leaves us with dative plural. And since that's the only thing it can be and we don't have an et, which means an and between them, what we're going to do is make this one nominative plural. And again, nominative, verb, accusative, dative. That's the order we're going to do it again in. So ancilli, scoot this up here a little bit, means the maid servants. Make sure that you are making that plural. Dabunt. Here is our giving, showing, telling verb. So that's our clue. The maid servants, and it's future, will give. What will they give? They'll give the accusative. They'll give dinner. To whom? The dead member. To the poets. So slow it down, break it down. Know your patterns, know what to look for, know what order to translate things in, and dative actually doesn't become intimidating. It actually becomes relatively easy. Then that's all there is for the dative.